The steak was still sizzling when USDA Inspector Lisa McPherson dropped her fork mid-bite. What she just read in the confidential file laid open beside her dinner plate made her stomach churn, not from the meat, but from the truth. Hidden pathogens, falsified inspection reports, and a top-secret USDA audit quietly buried to avoid public panic. That steak she was eating? It was flagged in the report. This wasn't a one-off mistake. It was part of a multi-billion-dollar meat industry scandal that stretches from blood-slick factory floors in Kansas to high-end steakhouses in New York City. Every bite of steak you take might come with a secret, and the people who know don't want you to find out. In the next 15 minutes, we'll take you deep inside slaughterhouses the public is never meant to see, into the shocking experiments scientists are running on cattle DNA, and reveal how what's marketed as premium beef could be harming your health in ways we're only just beginning to understand. So before you pick up that next ride, watch this. In the meat world, marbling is gold. But what most consumers don't realize is that some of the most beautiful steaks, the ones with buttery fat, laced through deep red muscle, are coming from cows pumped full of synthetic hormones and fattened on genetically modified corn that's banned in several European countries. Take Tyson Foods, one of America's largest beef producers. An internal memo leaked in 2023 showed that certain cattle feedlots were lacing cow feed with a drug cocktail originally developed for asthma patients, used not for health, but to make cows gain more weight in less time. More weight means more profit per animal, but for the consumer, it means more residues of ractopamine, a drug so controversial it's banned in over 160 countries, including China, Russia, and the European Union. U.S. beef producers still insist it's safe, but multiple FDA reports show trace amounts of the drug routinely appear in grocery store beef samples. And consumers, they're not told a thing. In 2022, an undercover investigator posing as a janitor placed 3 tiny pinhole cameras inside a Nebraska slaughterhouse owned by a major U.S. beef supplier. The footage, which has never aired on national television, showed cows being skinned alive. Why? Because the stunning equipment designed to render animals unconscious malfunctioned regularly, and operators were under pressure to keep the line moving. Each minute of delay cost the facility thousands of dollars. The solution? Keep the blades running. When the footage was sent to the USDA, they issued a fine $14,000 to a company making nearly $2 billion a year. What's worse, consumers eating meat from that facility were never informed. The product went straight to major supermarket chains, repackaged with prime-grade stickers, and sold as a premium product. You've seen it on menus: American Kobe, Wagyu style, or Kobe-inspired. But here's the truth: they're lying to you. Real Kobe beef comes from a specific breed of cattle, the Tajima strain of Wagyu, raised in the Hyogo Prefecture of Japan under strict conditions. Only 9 restaurants in the entire United States are certified to sell real Kobe beef. So what are you getting when you paid $180 for a Kobe steak at a flashy Las Vegas restaurant? Probably a crossbred cow raised on an American feedlot, possibly injected with fat-enhancing drugs, and absolutely not from Japan. A 2020 investigation by The Washington Post found that over 90% of restaurants advertising Kobe were mislabeling their beef. And the USDA, it doesn't regulate the term Kobe. Anyone can slap the label on a steak. The entire American luxury beef scene is built on a branding illusion, and your wallet is footing the bill. In 2024, scientists at a biotech startup in Missouri achieved something that sounds like science fiction. They edited the genes of cattle embryos to produce meat with 30% more intramuscular fat, and they did it without triggering the USDA's genetically modified organism, GMO, classification. Translation: your steak could be genetically altered, and you wouldn't know it. The technique, called CRISPR-Cas9, allows researchers to fine-tune traits like tenderness, marbling, and even shelf life. One company, Celgene, has already partnered with a large beef supplier to scale this up. They claim it's the future of sustainable meat. But no long-term human safety studies have been done. Critics argue we're playing with fire. Once altered DNA enters the food chain, there's no going back. And yet, there's zero labeling requirement in the U.S. to disclose gene-edited meat. That steak in your fridge, it could be the first of a new kind of livestock. Engineered, optimized, and totally unregulated. The label says grass-fed. The packaging shows a cow grazing in an open field, but the truth is often much darker. U.S. labeling laws are shockingly loose. As long as a cow at some point in its life eats grass, it can be sold as grass-fed. Many beef producers exploit this by feeding cattle grass during the first months of life, then moving them to confined feedlots and finishing them on GMO corn and soy. Yet the label remains. In 2021, the USDA's own audit revealed that nearly 40% of grass-fed labeled beef on the market didn't meet the standard consumers believe it implies. And most of it's imported. Australia and Uruguay now dominate the U.S. grass-fed market, and their labeling standards vary. In one case, beef labeled as 100% grass-fed, and a California Whole Foods was traced back to a South American feedlot using both pasture and grain. You're paying a premium, but you're not getting what you think. The wine is flowing. The dry-aged tomahawk arrives on a wooden slab. Your bill is pushing $500. But behind the Instagram-worthy presentation, something sinister lurks. A former executive chef at a Michelin-starred steakhouse in Chicago revealed to Insider that the majority of their aged in-house meat was actually aged off-site at a mass facility, then repackaged to appear artisanal. The real trick wasn't in the meat, it was in the lighting. Blue-tinged LEDs made steaks appear fresher and redder. He also confessed that steaks labeled locally sourced were often bulk ordered from the same distributors used by fast food chains, just sliced differently and plated with flair. Luxury steakhouses have become temples of illusion. You're not just overpaying, you're being manipulated by a finely tuned psychological machine. You thought mad cow disease was a thing of the past. Think again. In May 2023, a 58-year-old woman in Texas died after being diagnosed with a rare brain disorder. Official cause: Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, a human variant of mad cow. The CDC didn't make a national announcement, but quietly confirmed it was potentially linked to contaminated beef. BSE, bovine spongiform encephalopathy, is incredibly rare. But here's the disturbing part. It only takes one infected cow to contaminate thousands of pounds of beef. And due to modern slaughtering techniques where spinal tissue and brain matter can mix with meat trimmings, the risk is very real. Since 2012, at least 4 cases of BSE have been detected in U.S. cattle. But without routine testing of every animal, as is done in Japan, infected beef could slip through. If it ends up on your plate, there's no cure. In 2023, the FDA and USDA approved the sale of lab-grown meat grown from animal cells in steel bioreactors rather than on farms. 2 companies, Upside Foods and God Meat, started offering lab-grown chicken to select restaurants. Because next. Proponents say it's cruelty-free, climate-friendly, and could eliminate the horrors of factory farming. But whistleblowers inside one of the startups say the public isn't being told the whole story. Growing meat at scale requires fetal bovine serum harvested from unborn cows. The process is neither cheap nor fully cruelty-free, and tests on the final product have shown traces of antibiotics and growth media. Is lab-grown meat a revolutionary breakthrough or just another illusion? Here's a number that should stop you cold. Producing 1 pound of beef emits the same amount of greenhouse gas as driving a car for 180 miles. Cows burp methane, a greenhouse gas, over 80 times more potent than carbon dioxide. A single steer can emit up to 220 pounds of methane per year. With over 90 million cattle in the U.S., the math becomes staggering. In fact, beef production alone accounts for nearly 40% of all agricultural emissions in the country. And yet, the meat industry spends millions lobbying to suppress these facts, push climate-neutral beef labels, and delay regulations on methane capture. If beef were a country, it would be one of the top 10 polluters on Earth. So where does that leave you? You don't have to give up steak forever, but you do need to know the source. Asterisk, look for third-party certifications like AWA, Animal Welfare Approved, and Certified Grass-Fed by AGW. Asterisk, avoid vague labels like natural, premium, or all-American. Asterisk, if it says "co", ask for proof. Asterisk, buy from local farms or ranches you can verify. And most importantly, stop trusting labels alone. The truth behind your steak isn't in the packaging. It's in the system that put it there. In the hills of Montana, hidden behind miles of private road and guarded gates, sits a sprawling 25,000-acre property known only by insiders as Project M. It's owned by a food tech billionaire who made his fortune in AI, but is now secretly pouring millions into beef, not for profit, but for control. Sources close to the project say the ranch isn't just raising cattle, it's tracking them. Each animal wears an RFID chip, transmitting data on weight gain, behavior, and even emotional stress levels. That data is fed into machine learning systems that predict when the animal will yield the highest profit and the lowest disease risk. the project's ultimate goal. A closed-loop beef system where AI determines when an animal is bred, what it eats, how long it lives, and when it dies. No middlemen, no guesswork. Just optimized, industrialized flesh production. And here's the kicker. The meat is sold under a full, local farm brand to elite restaurants in Los Angeles and New York, marketed as small batch, hand-selected beef. In April 2023, an anonymous whistleblower within the Food and Drug Administration released internal documents showing what many feared but couldn't prove. The steak lobby has infiltrated the regulators. Meeting notes revealed that executives from Cargill, JBS, and the North American Meat Institute met weekly with FDA advisors during discussions about meat labeling reforms. At one point, a senior FDA official is quoted as saying, "We can't afford a consumer panic slow roll it until the next administration." Proposals that would have required transparent labeling of cloned beef, hormone use, and carbon footprint were quietly killed. The documents also showed how industry groups paid for consumer outreach studies to test how people reacted to certain terms like cell-cultured meat versus lab-grown meat, whichever phrase made people feel less uncomfortable. That's what ended up in public messaging. It's not regulation. It's manipulation. You've seen them, A-list celebrities posing with tomahawk steaks, partnering with trendy butcher brands, launching meat subscription boxes. But what you haven't seen are the NDAs they signed to never speak a word about how the meat is sourced. In 2022, actor Kevin Hart teamed up with a popular steak delivery service. The campaign boasted ethically raised, hormone-free beef. But court records from a supplier lawsuit revealed that those claims were never independently verified, and some of the cattle came from Brazilian deforested zones linked to illegal land grabs and slave labor. And he wasn't alone. Leaked contracts show that at least 7 major celebrities received bonuses for agreeing not to support plant-based alternatives during the term of their meat endorsements. One contract even had a clause banning the celeb from participating in any documentary critical of the beef industry. Hollywood isn't just selling you steak. It's selling you a sanitized illusion. While Americans argue over grass-fed versus grain-fed, another battle rages silently across borders. The international beef war. Australia and the U.S. are locked in a quiet trade conflict over meat exports. Why? Because American beef is increasingly being rejected overseas, not for taste, but for safety. In 2024, South Korea pulled shipments of U.S. beef after discovering illegal levels of growth hormones. Japan followed by tightening its import regulations. Meanwhile, Australia, known for stricter practices, is now dominating global premium beef markets, especially in the Middle East and Asia. To fight back, American meat lobbies are pushing the U.S. government to apply tariffs on Australian beef and even lobbying to change labeling laws that favor foreign meat in U.S. supermarkets. Consumers aren't just part of this war. They're the pawns. You walk into a supermarket and see 6 different brands of steak. It feels like choice. But peel back the corporate layers, and you'll find they all trace back to just 4 megacorporations: Tyson, Cargill, GBS, and National Beef. These giants control over 85% of all beef production in the United States. They set prices, dominate supply chains, and even control the trucking and distribution networks. Smaller independent labels, often just rebranded versions of their product. In 2023, a small Oklahoma butcher went viral after exposing that the local farm beef he was required to sell through his distributor was actually bulk packaged JBS meat repackaged with rustic branding. The meat industry doesn't want you to know that your options are rigged. No matter which cut you choose, you're likely funding the same corporate machine. Activists who try to expose the beef industry don't just face pushback, they face ruin. In 2021, journalist Emily Garrett published a series of investigative pieces on contaminated meat supplies linked to cancer clusters in rural communities. A month later, she was slapped with a defamation lawsuit by a beef lobbying group seeking $12 million in damages. Her articles were removed from multiple platforms. Her podcast lost sponsors. And an FOIA request later revealed emails between government officials and meat lobbyists discussing how to make an example of her. It's not an isolated case. Over a dozen former USDA inspectors have blown the whistle on unsafe conditions. Several have reported being followed, receiving anonymous threats, or suddenly failing surprise audits at their next job. The message is clear. If you speak out, they will come for you. Every bite of steak is a choice between illusion and awareness, between convenience and consequence. The meat industry is betting that you'll keep eating in the dark, that you won't ask questions, that you'll see the perfect sear and forget the story behind it. But now you know better. So before you buy that next steak, ask yourself, what's really on your plate?